every 3rd of December is marked globally as International Day for Persons with Disabilities. So joining us now to discuss the message behind this year's commemoration, the impact of COVID-19 on persons in this critical demographic and institutional support, or lack of it, is David Anyaele, Executive Director, Center for Citizens with Disability. Welcome to the program. It's a joy having you. How has it been like this year, in tandem with the theme of this year's celebration, owing to the pandemic we had all over the world? What are the challenges, and how can we mitigate these challenges? Because the pandemic still continues.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to, share my thoughts on today's International Day for Persons with Disabilities. The advent of COVID-19 pandemic was excruciating to the disability community. In particular, the lockdown measures that was designed without consideration of its impact to people with disabilities was the least expected from the state, recognizing that last year, President Muhammadu Buhari signed into law Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Prohibition Act, which prohibits all forms of discrimination and other harmful practices against more than 25 million Nigerians with disabilities. What happened during the COVID-19 was that the lockdown palliative that was designed to cushion the effect of the COVID-19 was not designed to target people with disabilities. We had to shout, scream to get government attention before we saw tinkling of some materials that were shared to privilege individuals with disabilities. So people with disabilities in Nigeria really pay dearly for the consequence of COVID-19.
Well, David, we don't seem to have much time, and it's good that you referred to the law that was passed in 2018 by the National Assembly and signed into law by President Buhari, which prohibits all forms of discrimination against persons living with disabilities. Now, the UN theme for this year is inclusion of persons living with disabilities, expanding the scope for inclusion. Do you see a sense of Nigeria implementing the law or following the idea of inclusion? And we already have in place a national commission for persons with disabilities as proposed by that law that you quoted earlier.
Yeah, on the part of federal government of Nigeria, we've seen some effort in terms of implementing the Disability Act. One, the establishment of the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities, the nomination of members of the board, which is currently undergoing scrutiny at the National Assembly. But beyond that also, we are worried that the key responsibilities expected to be displayed by different line ministries and agencies, we are not getting it. In particular, Section 2 of the Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Prohibition Act provides that awareness creation, exposing the contribution of people with disabilities, promoting their rights and dignities by Ministry of Information is still not being implemented. As I speak to you, Ministry of Information, led by Alhaji Lai Mohammed, is shying away from implementing Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Prohibition Act. As such, awareness is not there. Bulk of the line ministries expected to play one role or the other are not implementing. As such, it becomes really worrisome. Where they play such a role, we wouldn't have suffered what we suffered during the lockdown. A situation where ease of lockdown measures were being designed by different agencies and departments. There was no consideration of people with disabilities. In particular, Ministry of Aviation. Ministry of Aviation designed ease of lockdown guidelines, and there was no effort made by the ministry to ensure that people with disabilities have access to aircraft. So as of today, if you're a person with disabilities, if you're in a wheelchair, you are being carried like a bag of cement to the aircraft, which is dehumanizing. So not only that, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, these ministries are not playing the kind of role we expect them to play in terms of implementing the Disability Act.
They're certainly not, and there are 13 state governments that have not implemented it. And what you've just said about aircrafts, 99% of public buildings in Nigeria are inaccessible to people with disabilities. But you've made a call that I find really interesting. I want you to expand on that. For action to be taken about people with disabilities having to resort to begging. We see them on our streets. What would you like to see the government do?
We say that people with disabilities are begging on the streets because it state-induced. A situation whereby year in, year out, no budgetary provision is made for rehabilitation of people with disabilities. What next would they do? We've just talked about COVID-19 and its implications on people with disabilities, where palliatives are being shared, where lockdown measures or ease of lockdown guidelines were being designed at the exclusion. As such, you discover that they're on their own. They have no choice other than to go and beg. Each state make budget for rehabilitation. The question is, how many were rehabilitated? None. There is a state, Akwa Ibom State in particular, said that they send people, blind people, to Nigerian Farm Craft Center for the Blind for rehabilitation. 20. Unfortunately, nobody from Akwa Ibom that is blind that were sent to that particular school. So you discover that people with disabilities are being used to design budget for rehabilitation. Unfortunately, they can't get rehabilitation. So how do you participate when there is a measure being designed, economic measure being designed to benefit all? People with disabilities are not considered. They have no other choice than to beg. Also, the state stigmatizes people with disabilities. An average, state official discriminates people with disabilities. So even if you want to seek audience with them to share issues of critical concern on persons with disabilities, they can never grant you audience. Rather, they will think that you're coming for charity or you're coming to beg as well. So the situation keep on going down. What we need here in Nigeria is awareness creation on the rights of persons with disabilities. What we need is the government to lead the process of sensitizing the public, of sensitizing its own institutions, to let them know that all lives are precious, that disability life also matters. That's the situation we find ourselves, man.
Certainly, David. All lives are precious. All lives matter. Thank you very much for joining us.